Congratulations, we made it. We will call to order our virtual regular meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Planning Commission for July 1. Can we have a roll call, please?
Burgess.
Here in Kalamazoo.
Chambers. Absent. Harrison. I'll come back to you. Milliken.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Phelps.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Patelko.
Present in Kalamazoo.
Pitts is not here yet. Swan, not here yet. Vias.
Kalamazoo.
Great,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
In
hold on one moment,
sorry, go
Chair.
ahead. Yeah.
Commissioner Harrison, can you hear us? Okay, I see that he is here. He's going on and off mute, but I'm not hearing an affirmative. I see that Commissioner
Right.
Pitts has arrived.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Welcome. Okay. Moving on, in our packets, we received an agenda for tonight's meeting. Are there any changes to the agenda for tonight's meeting?
There are none.
All right. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Is there support? Support. The motion by Vias, support by Burgess. All in favor of the motion, say yay or raise your hand.
Okay.
Any opposed? Say no or raise your hand. Great. Motion is approved. Thank you. We also received the minutes of the June 3rd, 2021 meeting. Any questions, comments, changes? Thank you for putting those together. All right. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes, please?
I will move to approve the minutes of the June 3rd meeting.
Thank you. Motion by Burgess. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Patelko. All in favor of the motion, say yes or raise your hand.
Yes.
Any opposed? Say no or raise your hand. Great. Thank you very much. Is there any communication or announcements?
None at this time.
Excellent. So that'll move us into our public hearings. As a reminder, in our virtual setting, we are taking public comments via phone call. Please call 269-226-6573. When you call that number, you'll be prompted by a recording to leave a message in one of 3 mailboxes tonight. We have 2 public hearings. One special use permit on Cooley Street. The other, the amendments to the zoning ordinance for the natural features protection overlay. So if you have a specific message or comment on either of those cases, please leave it in the specific mailbox regarding that case. If you have a general comment not regarding either of those items, please leave it in the other mailbox regarding general planning commission comments. We want to make sure we get your comment and we get it in the appropriate time in the meeting. And we will be taking comments up until that item's public comment period is closed during the meeting. I think I covered everything. All right, with that, we will move on to PC 2021-09, 723 Cooley Street, a request for a special use permit for a rooming house at 723 Cooley Street in the RM36 zoning district. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. I'm going to screen share here, bring up the PowerPoint. And good evening, commissioners. Tonight, And I'm just going to do a brief overview of 723 Cooley Street. We've got the property owner, Ron Franklin, with us tonight to talk about the special use permit for a rooming house. And just to back up and talk about, what a rooming house is defined as, is a situation where you are renting rooming units. So the bedrooms are rented independently of one another, and then the rest of the house is used as common space for those tenants. So this is the format that it's another housing option, another way to break up a rental dwelling and be able to rent it by the bedroom. So this aerial view just shows roughly where the property is between Frank and North on Cooley Street. And when we look at the subject property more closely, you can see it's a 2-story house. This is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Overall size is 1,235 square feet. Because it is in the RM36 zone district, given the lot size, it technically could be converted into a duplex, but Mr. Franklin would prefer to just utilize it as a rooming house and keep it in that capacity as just one, essentially one dwelling unit. So not altering the interior layout. Looking to the south down Cooley Street, you can see the other residences. And then at the end of the block on the right on North Street, that corner building is the Dahan Heating and Cooling business. In the other direction, looking to the north, you can see there's a vacant lot across the street on the east side of Cooley Street that's owned by the land bank. There's also another vacant lot directly north of 723 Cooley Street on the west side. So there's 2 vacant lots. They're both owned by the land bank. And then on the opposite side of Frank Street, you can see the other residences in the area. So it's it is predominantly residential. It's about 50% rental on Cooley Street of the 6 dwellings that are there. And looking at the zoning, this is an area that we've already done some larger scale rezoning in. So half of the block of Cooley is in that Live Work 1 zone now. And that corresponds with the commercial businesses along the north side of, the north side of West North Street. And then, of course, it transitions as you go up Cooley Street into that RM36 residential zone district. Looking at the future land use map, you can see this is designated as neighborhood edge. And that is indicative of an area where you've got, support for our small scale commercial as well as single family and medium density residential, which this rooming house with only 3 rooming units definitely falls into that category. In addition to looking at that, this does align well with the not only the master plan but the North Side neighborhood plan as far as offering alternative housing options. So that was another item I wanted to point out here. And then we did do the normal community outreach with the public hearing notices for this public hearing tonight. Those were sent out to the surrounding property owners within 300 feet on June 16th. Mr. Franklin also went door to door to try to reach the residents that live on Cooley Street to explain to them his application to the Planning Commission tonight. So that's the level of outreach that's been done. In addition to those facts, I just want to go over here the rationale. The high points are up on the PowerPoint, but as the Planning Commission members are aware, There's review criteria that a special use must meet in order to be approved by the Planning Commission. And when looking back at that criteria, the first one is the proposed special use is appropriate for this area, and the proposed location is compatible with the surrounding land uses. This use is compatible with the block of Cooley Street between West North and West Frank. As I mentioned before, there are only 6 dwelling units, and 3 of those are rental. And then on the southern portion of the block along North Street, you've got the DeHaan Heat and Cooling commercial property. The second criteria, that the proposed special use complies with section 4.2, the use standards of the zoning ordinance, and the rooming house does comply with the ordinance. There are no additional standards set forth in that chapter that specifically need to be met for a rooming house. And in addition to that, this is an RM36 zone district, so it's a high density residential. So as an example of other special use, special land uses allowed, things in addition to rooming houses, you'd have transitional residences, rehabilitation centers, group daycare, parking lots, fraternities and sorority houses. Those are all other examples of uses that are special uses in the RM36 zone district. Moving on to the next criteria, that the location and design of the proposed special use minimizes the adverse effects and of visual impact, odor, noise, glare, etc., and does not create any nuisances. This existing dwelling that we're talking about tonight was built in 1905. There won't be any change to the exterior of the structure as a result of this special use permit approval or the interior layout. And there is adequate parking on the site. So no physical changes. Moving on, the next criteria, that the proposed special use minimizes the environmental impact. There isn't any environmental impact noted by this proposal tonight. As far as adequate road capacity and ingress egress, there's definitely adequate road capacity for a 3-room rooming house, and there is an existing driveway already, so no new ingress egress is being added. There are adequate services that serve this dwelling unit: city water, city sewer, adequate access for emergency vehicles. That's always something we want to make sure, depending on the intensity of the special use. And that the special use complies with all the standards imposed on it by all the other applicable provisions of the ordinance. And what I have to answer that with is that the rooming house use does meet the zoning ordinance, as I mentioned, and it is also subject to the rental housing code. This will be inspected just like any other rental unit in the city, and there are a few provisions in the housing code that are specific to rooming houses, as far as how the locks are set up for the bedroom doors and so forth. So it will have to comply with the housing code as well as the other ordinance regulations. And with that being said, the recommendation from staff is to approve the special use permit before the board. That is the recommendation for tonight. And thank you. I'll be willing to answer any questions if you have any.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this moment?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner.
And then
Right,
we
go
also
for it.
need to bring Mr. Franklin in to speak also, but I thought I'd pause right there for a minute.
Yes, perfect. Whoever said they had a question first, go ahead.
Yeah, that was me. I'm sorry about that. This is Commissioner Harrison. I just wanted to know, how long are these special permits in use for? Like, what is the term of existence for these special use permits?
Well, the special use permit goes with the land. So as long as future landowners continue to use it in the exact same way as a 3-room rooming house, then there isn't any change. But if somebody were to come in and want to, modify the structure, add more bedrooms to the rooming house, that would then be outside the scope of this approval we're talking about tonight. So anything like that would bring it back to the planning commission.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Vyas, did you have a question?
I did. Pete, you might have mentioned this. Could you clarify how many people are allowed to live in each room? Is it one resident per room? Are there regulations on that?
It's based on the bedroom size, so it's a minimum of 100 square feet for a single occupancy bedroom. And then it is an additional 50 square feet so you need, I believe that's right.
To be clear, this is building code, not zoning.
Yeah,
code.
this is not, yeah, this is coming out of the building code now. But
Right. So the reason I'm asking is, we said that there's enough parking, but my recollection of Cooley Street is that it's one way. And so I'm envisioning maybe 4 or 5 residents now in this one house. And I don't believe there is parking for quite that many residents.
Well, and I don't know the bedroom sizes, but
Yeah.
the parking requirement is 3. So it is a single lane driveway that's long enough to accommodate 3 vehicles. So that's how that is achieved. But we can ask Mr. Franklin that question as far as the bedroom sizes and the anticipated occupant load. That's a good question, though.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff at this moment?
Okay, why don't we bring
If
in
not, let's
Mr. Franklin?
go for it.
Okay, Mr. Franklin, would you like to give a brief overview?
Yes. How's everyone?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to attend this meeting. I think Pete has done an outstanding job of presenting it. I don't have a lot to add, but there are, like it's been stated, it's a 3-bedroom facility. None of the residents currently have vehicles, and as long as I've had it, no residents that have lived there have vehicles. So I think the parking issue, even if 1 came with or 2 came with a vehicle, I don't think that would be an issue. But it does accommodate 3, as was stated. In terms of the people in the bedroom, it's currently 1 in a bedroom. So I don't know if there are any other, I don't know about the sizes. I think Pete is more of an expert in that than I am, but unless there's some other questions I can address. Any other questions that I can entertain?
Mr. Franklin, I know you were going to talk about how that there's a need for this sort of rental option.
Yes. Yeah. There is a tremendous need for these kind of facilities. You get a lot of families that are seeking housing, but there's also a lot of individuals seeking housing as well who do not have, for instance, the resources to move and support the full housing on their own. So this serves to fulfill that gap, or not the complete gap, but it certainly helps individuals. You have, and I'm sure this is no surprise, so you have individuals who sometimes are coming out of, I'm not saying that these are the residents that we currently have, but you have individuals coming out of jail or different facilities trying to work their way back in the community where they can live independently. And this type of facility helps to meet that need for many individuals. So I think it's a real plus to have, a variety of rooming houses within the community where they can come together and share in the expenses and the support. As was stated, they have individual bedrooms, but the other facilities are common living room, dining room, kitchen, bathroom upstairs, and then there's a half bath in the downstairs area.
Thank you. Any other questions at this moment for Mr. Franklin? Mr. Franklin, how far away do you live from the property? And I ask you not to be too uber personal, but more from a management oversight. If there's an issue, if there's a pipe broken, if there's something going on and they call, how far away are you from being able to address the situation?
I live in Rudgate, 12th and Center.
Oh, yep.
And this is, well, you know where this is on
Yep.
Cooley. So it takes about, I would say 15 minutes to get there. So that's about the amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
Yes, sir. Hello?
Pitts, do you have a question?
Yes, yes. Had a question for you. Is there a time limit that you have on your leasing? Are you doing like, as far as like, go ahead.
For the residents?
Yes.
Typically, you want 6 months at a minimum, and, if you get a year, but it can be broken. I mean, that's not held strictly to, so that's somewhat optional at times.
Okay.
It's very much like, and for these rooming houses, we'd like to have, like a 30-day advance notice before you just move out. And it's similar to renting to, a single family. They just, you want certain guidelines in place, to run more efficiently. And so this is very similar.
Okay.
Only difference really is that you have individuals coming together as opposed to a single family. That's the only difference that I see.
Okay. Will they be able to choose roommates or not somewhat like roommates, but will they be able to choose, or if they have like a complaint, do you have anything in place for that?
You mean roommates in the same room or in the house, in the facility?
In the facility.
Yeah, we do, in terms of people living there, you want to always make sure that there's a common fit. You don't want to put people in there that, that will cause disruption in the household. And if that is the case, if you find out that it is the case, then that's addressed immediately. Because, we want everyone to have a place that they can call home, peace, and everyone gets along very well. I mean, that's a very well, every time I go over there, I compliment them on how neat and clean and well run the house is. And it's just a really nice interior, really good environment.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to
Yes.
reiterate from Commissioner Pitt's question. So in theory, a group could come, a group of friends or acquaintances or whatever could come and rent the entire space all together. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
If there are openings in all of the rooms.
Right. Yeah. Assuming all.
Typically, that's not the case.
Right.
Typically, you will find just one vacancy at a time, and that we seek to fill that. But we never have where all the rooms are empty, and just a group would come together and rent. No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
However, let me say this too. The option is always there to rent to a single family or individuals. So because it is a rooming house, you still maintain the flexibility to rent to a single family. The special use simply gives you that option.
Chair, could I come in at this point?
Please.
I just wanted to note that for this type of rental unit, it sounds like Mr. Franklin probably, because the tenants often don't know each other and share initially and share common space, you might need to do a little more management than folks might have to do in other types of rental areas. So just thank you for providing this type of housing opportunity for folks.
Thank you. It's much needed, much needed.
Mr. Franklin, can I ask you one question?
Yes, sir.
What is the process that you go through to rank? Like if you have one opening, but you have 3 candidates, maybe somebody returning from prison or a single family that's looking for some housing, or maybe just a student looking for a place to stay. Is there a process that you go through or that your organization goes through to rank who would be the best fit for that space?
Well, that there again is very similar to renting to an individual family. You want to check history, you want to check references, background, and make sure that their history doesn't show any concerns. So again, it's very similar. And again, if they get in and there's indications of problems in terms of not being able to work well with others, then we address that. That's not allowed. So checking background is very important in either situation, whether it's rooming house or single family.
Any other questions at this moment? If not, let's open the public hearing. Are there any public comments that have been submitted on this item?
There are no public comments for this agenda item.
Okay. Hearing that, I will close the public hearing. Do commissioners have any other clarifying questions at this time? If not, I will reopen my agenda here and I will take a motion so we can start discussion. A motion to approve the special use permit for the rooming house at 723 Cooley Street in the RM36 zoning district.
I will move approval of the request.
Oh, we have a motion by Burgess. Do we have support? Is that Commissioner Pitts?
Yes.
All right, support by Pitts. Okay, Commissioner Burgess, do you want to kick off our discussion?
Sure. I would merely say that this change in status for the house is continues to be consistent with the current zoning and both the future zoning intended for the space, as detailed in the staff report. Also, changing the status of the house really changes nothing for the exterior of the house as far as some of the other major requirements and the details. I just see no concern to keep us from approving this, and I will certainly approve.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yeah. I would like to say that I think that it's a great idea. I've kind of seen similar things on the north side because being from the north side, I've had a chance to actually witness these type of housing things go on. And I think it's a good idea and something that's greatly needed myself. So you'll have my support. Thank you.
Other discussion? Well, I'll add that this is a great opportunity for a desperate need in our community. I'm guessing, so I'm entering my 6th year on the Planning Commission. This is, I believe, the first rooming house request I've had. I am guessing, like you suggested, Commissioner Pitts, there are many more out there. So getting the word out, not that I need to micromanage or see every rooming house that comes before, but as this is a really unique way to increase density without having to construct and create a whole lot of new construction. And so taking existing housing stock and providing opportunities for more housing within the existing housing stock in the appropriate areas, and making sure that education and knowledge is out there in the appropriate places is a good thing. So where we can spread the word, I think, is great, especially where it's working. So kudos to you. Thanks for going through the process. Thanks for getting the approvals. And just reiterating, like I often do, I concur with the staff report that it meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Any other comments from commissioners? If not, I think we're ready for a roll call vote on the motion. And remember, this is a motion. The motion that was made was to approve the request for the special use permit.
Bias,
Yes.
Pitts,
Yes.
Patelko,
Yes.
Phelps,
Yes.
Milliken,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Burgess.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Franklin.
Thank you all for your support. Mhm.
All right, we'll move to our second public hearing, PC 2021.10, the Natural Features Protection Overlay Map and Text Amendment to Chapter 50 of the Zoning Code, Article 6. Staff, this is Jamie.
Yes. So good evening, Commissioner Milliken or Chair Milliken and planning commissioners. Thanks for having this on your agenda tonight. As you know, I'm Jamie McCarthy, and I serve as our staff liaison to the city's Natural Features Protection Review Board. So tonight I have some slides to share. Let me load those up a minute. All right, those should be coming up. So tonight, I'm pleased to present to you the recommendation from the Natural Features Protection Review Board on some amendments to the map and text of Chapter 50, Article 6 of the Zoning Code, which covers natural features protection, or NFP, as we're going to call it tonight. The NFP board over the past year and a half has been working on this amendment, both to the map and more recently, some more substantive changes to the text of the code. And some of the changes that have occurred since you all saw this last fall was that the map incorporates some updated data where possible. The criteria have been changed a bit to be more objective, and then the map was put out for public feedback to try to help identify any errors in the data that might be out there. The text amendments are in response to some observations and evaluation that the NFP board has been making over the past 2 years of implementing the code. And then we also based some of those changes on the feedback that we received over the last 6 months, engaging with the public and what we heard last fall at the Planning Commission meeting. So at last month's meeting, your Planning Commission meeting, staff provided an overview of how NFP has been implemented to date over the past 2 years and how it's resulted in more intentional design and development with the natural features of that site in mind. And you heard some specific examples of how NFP has been successfully implemented. Sites where hazardous materials have been kept away from rivers or water bodies, projects where they were able to balance some of their land clearing while leaving some woodlands intact. And now we have the opportunity to take that process that's been, more or less tested, if you will, on a smaller overlay district and really expand that to more thoroughly cover the significant natural features in the city. And also in your packet, I'll point out that it highlights how this expansion does align with many of our neighborhood plans throughout the city and how we use that as some of the public feedback in where this overlay district should be applied. So tonight with me, I have Nolan Bergstrom from our department. He's our neighborhood projects coordinator, and both of us will be talking about the community engagement we've done over the last month since coming to the last planning commission and how we've been trying to provide more information to residents and to businesses about exactly what NFP is and how it might impact or influence some of their projects or properties. So to begin with, we created an online map. This time around, we wanted to convey a lot more information at the individual parcel level about why a parcel is proposed to be added to the map. And you can see this is a small map. I know we've been directing everyone to the website to be able to zoom in, to be able to search those parcels. But you can kind of see, generally speaking, those green parcels are the approximately 376 properties that are currently in the overlay district and have been for the last 2 years. And then the pink are the parcels that we're proposing an expansion, where we've identified natural features through publicly available data. And that would expand the overall district with the green and the pink together to like 1,865 parcels in total. And they're covering, you can see, is kind of how it's oriented and spread across the city. It's covering water bodies throughout the city. It's covering watershed slopes. And I'll let Nolan share a little bit more here about how the online map is able to provide and has been able to provide more information to folks about certain parcels. And then when Nolan's done, I'll go back to kind of talking about the rules and how we've been sharing information about the changes to those rules.
All right,
No,
thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, let me know when you need me to advance these slides.
Sounds good. Yeah, so my name's Nolan Bergstrom, serving as an AmeriCorps member with Jamie as my main supervisor with the city. And yeah, I just some quick things about the web map, because this was sort of new compared to phase 1 and even sort of the first part 1 of phase 2. The idea I had was, well, what if we coded the map and made it easier for staff to reference, make it more searchable, and also easier for residents to look at, or kind of at least it conveys, like Jamie was saying, the, what selecting features are on their property. So the method was to have a primary feature, secondary feature, and a tertiary feature. And one thing to point out is that nearly half only had one major feature, and then roughly 41% had 2 primary selecting features, and then 12% of that 1,800 plus parcels that are on the map, 12% had 3 features. And there's probably some within that, even maybe a smaller percentage, 6% or so, that would have 4 or more. So there were some parcels where there was a lot of features kind of coinciding in one area. The criteria or the selecting features themselves were adjacent to preserves. So there were some, there's major preserves in town that need to be protected, and there's the adjacent to preserve is meant to act as a buffer to protect those spaces further. Adjacent to hydrology and hydrology. So hydrology being the differentiator there is you actually have the hydrologic feature, as far as our data is telling us, on your site. Adjacent to hydrology is adjacent to hydrology. And slope was a big one. That was a pretty major primary feature. And then woodlands and community feedback were sort of added as well to kind of make it more robust. Can go to the next slide. And then just kind of seeing how the map works in action. I definitely advise everyone to check out the web map. It's actually worked out really, really well. And it's easy to update and convey what we're trying to convey. So I used Kleinstock Preserve as a good example here. So if someone were to, select the parcel on the north part of Kleinstock Preserve, kind of outlined in blue, what they would see is this dialog box that would pop up, and it would tell who the owner is, what the address is, and then the primary, secondary, and tertiary features as seen in box number 4. So yeah, the idea that we wanted to go with actually ended up working out really well because it's just very easy to reference. And alongside this, the map, there's a static version of it. So if folks are having access issues, and there's also a table, a lookup table that conveys all this information, but just not spatially. And then just to outline the process. So I jumped in to help Jamie in fall of 2019 with phase 2, and did the data gathering on the analysis for the map from fall of 2019 to spring of 2020 and into summer of 2020. And then after getting more feedback, we're in part 2 of phase 2, which allowed us to update the slope analysis, do more engagement with Q&A sessions at different times, and to look at the written standards more. And the sort of avenue that we've traveled down here is created something very, very robust with a lot of cross-pollination between departments and a lot of work on the NFP board. And I think it's in a place where it's, just very sound. And the hope is for if there's a phase 3, to focus in more on the engagement portion.
Thank you, Nolan. And so I'll add to what Nolan just shared that we also provided a large format printed map at City Hall. So folks could go in there on the first floor and check out a larger version of the map. And since you couldn't click on that kind of map, we had that lookup table that Nolan helped create where folks could kind of look at the analog table and find their property and look up those natural features there at City Hall. This time around, we also created a fact sheet and a frequently asked questions page that were mailed out with their notice letters. And then they're also available on the website. And then we held in June 2 different information sessions that really were meant to help focus on explaining more thoroughly how NFP rules apply to different projects or different properties, and then what those amendments look like, what were we proposing to change. And throughout the code, and especially in the amendment to the tree section, I'll point out, there are a lot of rules that only apply when a project, it states, this rule applies when a project requires site plan review. And so we spent some time kind of differentiating the different types of projects, because that kind of helps someone understand how the code or how those rules might impact their project or their property. So for most residential zones in the city where there's a single family home or a duplex on that parcel, there's no site plan review required. That's the case, whether you're in NFP or not, right? If you want to do a project, it requires a permit. You go right to the city. Staff would administratively review your permit for compliance with the zoning code, and NFP rules would, be part of that same process. And you wouldn't have to go to the NFP review board. I will point out that there is always an option in the ordinance and in this section of the zoning code where if you need to request a variance, if you have a hardship or when the rules would otherwise severely limit the use or development of a property for its own purpose, that's when you can, there's a path in the ordinance that helps you get through a zoning review and request. And that is the case where you'd go to the NFP review board. So the next category are those projects that require site plan review. And again, these are located projects, located anywhere in the city where there is new development or redevelopment, some sort of substantial change in use, maybe office space going to restaurant, for instance. And if you're a commercial, multifamily, even like manufacturing type property, you'd go to site plan review for, those changes for that new development. And in that case, you go through the site plan review application process. It's city staff in different departments that review and approve that plan. And then if you're in the NFP overlay district, you also make a stop at the NFP review board, similar to downtown review requirements and some of our other districts throughout the city. There's a board set up to review those more nuanced code and approve those plans. And then I think it's important also to point out this last category, where you see some special exceptions to our zoning code. So for the state, other governmental units, such as a public school district or a property used by the county, for instance, for public utilities where there might be work in a right of way, or for public universities, they fall under this category of special exceptions. And these entities, there are other state laws that exempt them from following the city's zoning code, and that can be really important when you're looking at the map. And I wanted to point out in particular, Western Michigan University has some properties, larger parcels that are currently in the NFP overlay district and mapped in NFP2. And so, brings up that question, why or what's the purpose of including a school or a county-owned parcel or a university-owned parcel? And really the purpose of this map is to reflect locations where we've mapped and can confirm, natural features exist there, regardless of ownership. Understanding that ownership will always be subject to change over time. And what happens with these types of projects is they can be reviewed, or they may be reviewed by the city, but it would be a case-by-case basis, if at all. Okay, so during our information sessions, we explained to folks how these rules applied to these different types of projects, to, especially the no site plan and the site plan type of projects. And for sites where no site plan is required, again, more of those single family duplex type residential properties, the way the rules work are it creates a setback from water bodies and wetlands for new buildings. There's also a tree protection requirement for certain species, although these can be removed for reasonable conditions, like the tree is threatening a structure or infrastructure, the tree is dead, diseased, significantly damaged, you need to get adequate access into the property. There is no special permit. Those can be taken down as long as you're following that rule. I think it's very similar to the rules around fences in our zoning code, right? You don't need, if you're following the rules, you don't necessarily need a permit to do that, but you will be held to, following those rules. And I think another really important thing to point out for the tree section in particular is that the amendments that are being proposed tonight really help alleviate and address some of the issues we heard from the community around trees. And two of the big changes would be that in a residential type project, no site plan review required, there would be no replacement requirement for those trees. And that just makes it simpler and more straightforward for implementation. And then also, we would remove the need to have an arborist or some sort of professional come out and do some sort of evaluation. And you can, do that work knowing again that you're following the rules and getting a tree taken down for all of the allowable reasons. There's also some woodland clearing that's allowed by right up to 75%, but there is a 25% or so preservation requirement. And that's again, based on the cover that's existing, how much woodland is already existing, kind of a sliding scale. And steep slopes with woodlands or near water bodies also have a similar setback for new structures and clearing like we have for water bodies. And then lastly, I'll mention there's a table with some prohibited plants, a list of some of the most problematic invasive species that applies to the overlay district. For a project that's required to go through site plan review at the city, moving over to our next column here, some of the major rules in the zoning code include everything that was in the last, left-hand column, plus throughout the city, we have stormwater standards. And if you're in the overlay district, those are a little more robust. There are some native plant requirements for required landscaping. So again, in the zoning code, certain types of projects have landscaping they have to put in. And so that would be required to be native. It's similar to the way the code currently exists, but there are a little bit of, there's a little more flexibility that's written into one of the amendments. In the NFP zone, there are some limits on hazardous materials and uses near water bodies. It was taken right from our wellhead protection, our drinking water protection ordinance, and placed into this one as well. So it's helping to protect surface water, similar to our underground water resources. There's a rare species search, which we've been doing. It's a database type search that these commercial type projects do as part of their zoning review or their plan review. And then there is a bonding requirement, and there's an amendment to this one where we're proposing that the NFP board has a little bit more guidance on when it's required instead of the sort of blanket requirement that currently exists. Okay, so to finish up here, I just wanted to talk a bit about our engagement and some of the public comments that we've received, some of them that you saw in your packet. Over the past month, we've had a number of, more one-on-one discussions with the community, and then those 2 information sessions that we held virtually. And we've had many comments coming in over the last, 1 to 2 weeks. Our notice letters were sent to any of the properties being added in the second phase and neighboring properties. That was done on June 7th. So I guess already last month. So now that we're July 1st. So those are sent out at the beginning of June. And all of our public comments, at least through yesterday, we've been trying to update and keep those posted to the NFP2 website on imaginekalamazoo.com. So I think it's been helping folks know if their comments been received. There was a request of the public that we kind of keep that online, similar to what we did in phase 1. So comments in June, sort of through the June NFP review board meeting, which was held on the 22nd, they got about 20 written comments at that meeting that were a mix of those in support. I would say the majority, by far the majority were in support. We did have some opposition. We had folks who wrote in opposition, and we had some calls as well that were mostly in support again, and some folks in opposition. We also offered this past month what we called our NFP zoning reviews, and we had about 4 or 5 folks take advantage of this. We were able to provide them with a more detailed map of some of the natural features data layers that we had, and then we could talk to them very specifically about how NFP rules might impact a project or something that they wanted to do on their property. And then lastly, we've had a number of calls, not nearly the number of calls as last fall, but we've probably talked to a dozen folks who either had general questions about their notice letters, but many who had really specific concerns or questions about their own properties. And we spent time talking with those folks, trying to help them understand the code a little bit more. In your packets, so comments kind of received in the last week, in your packet, I think you had probably just around 20 of them. And then we've been sharing through emails, a series of emails, more comments that you've seen. I think right now we're just over 40 comments. I will note that all of those were in support. And then we also had some of those letters coming from various boards and organizations. I hope you had a chance to check out the letter from the NFP review board. So they provided some background and some of their input and experience and recommendation for this proposal. And then you can see a list that I have there of some of the other organizations and groups like the city's Environmental Concerns Committee, folks who work on the Asylum Lake Preservation Association and the Management Council, Audubon Society, and a couple of our neighborhood associations, Oakland Drive, Winchell, and Parkview Hills. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Jamie or Nolan at this time? No, it's all clear. Yes, Mr. Burgess. Oh, you're muted.
There we go.
There you
Thank you. I just, Jamie, could you speak a little bit about your changes about bonding? I'm reading the strikeouts and the changes. Just tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so the board has found sort of in the 2 years they've been implementing this, that in many cases, especially on smaller projects, that the bonding requirement or you can see there was an alternative option there too with placing a lien on the property, that it felt like there was such a low threat to any natural features, or the changes on the property would, not really cause much concern. And so instead, the amendment there would be to selectively use that tool based on the criteria that were written in there, right? So the board has to evaluate, are there substantial natural features located on the site, or are they more minimal? And then is the nature of the work that's happening on that site a threat to those features, or is it a more minor set of work such that there's not much of a concern, and so they would, either forego bonding or require bonding as part of the site plan review. And we do a similar thing with some of our demolition permits, I understand, from our building trades folks.
Okay. Thank you. I understand the flexibility that giving the board the ability to determine whether it's needed or not allows, but I also know that opens you up to potential claims of being partial or being inconsistent sometimes. So, but it seems to make sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this time? If not, I believe we have some public comments.
I will play those right now.
All right, we'll open the public hearing and we'll receive those comments. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Simons, S-Y-M-O-N-S, 2516 High Point in Kalamazoo. This is my support for the natural protections plan that's being discussed. Item 2 on the agenda at tonight's meeting, protecting as much area in the city of Kalamazoo, particularly that in and around us, the Asylum Lake Preserve, which our property abuts next to. Thank you. 501-3702 is my phone number. See you tonight.
My name is Lori Holmes. I live at 2417 High Point Drive in Kalamazoo. I support the extension of the Natural Features Protection Ordinance. Some people have expressed the opinion the ordinance interferes with their right to do what they want to do with their property. What this view leaves out is the fact that we tell people all the time what they can and cannot do with their property. It's called zoning. This overlay is at its base an extension of our zoning laws. Zoning traditionally has kept us from having a factory built next to our homes or a bar next to a school. We have been slow to realize that it's just as important to have green spaces and trees, sources of water, hillsides, and parks as it is to have neighborhoods where people don't have factories or bars or adult bookstores. Cities are nudging people to plant trees. Across Africa, even, people are making green spaces. The cover story of the latest National Geographic magazine report on recent health studies that show that clean air and the presence of trees and green spaces in a neighborhood actually makes a big difference in the physical health of the residents. The deterioration of those conditions is being tied to the fact that, among other things, life expectancy in this country has actually been decreasing over the last 10 years, pre-COVID. This is the opposite of any other industrialized country in the world. The people who have these conclusions aren't wild-eyed tree huggers. They are people who are listening to science and who are thinking of the future of the whole community. As the City Planning Commission, it's your charge to promote the welfare of the whole community. Please fulfill your calling and help assure that this community will keep on being a place where we, our kids, and our grandkids will truly love where we live. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Hoadley. I'm the property owner at 2720 Parkview Avenue in Kalamazoo. I'm calling in support of the adoption of the Natural Feature Protection Phase 2 plan. It's a reasonable plan. It strikes a nice balance, and it makes sure that we're protecting our natural features. So I'm encouraging adoption. Thank you so much.
Yes, hello, my name is Joe Byers. I live in the Vine neighborhood. I'm calling in support of the Natural Features Protection Phase 2. I'm hoping that it's adopted and the city of Kalamazoo will quit cutting down trees. We are in a climate crisis. In fact, the city commission declared that we are in a climate crisis, and it's been 2 years and absolutely nothing has been done to mitigate the crisis. So I'm calling to make sure that we are not cutting down any more trees or downscaling any more green spaces. It's time for Kalamazoo leadership to stand up for the residents here in Kalamazoo and quit doing the bidding of big business, huge developers, and the billionaires that fund the city. Thank you.
This is Bonnie Alkema. I'm a resident of Parkview Hills. I live at 3318 Pine Bluff Lane in Kalamazoo. I am calling in to support the Natural Features Protection Ordinance Phase 2. This is hugely important to Kalamazoo, and considering where we are with climate change and what is happening to our world, this is a wonderful step forward with Kalamazoo doing this, and I strongly approve it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Morton Thompson, and I'm calling in on behalf of the entire board of the Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Association. Just to reiterate our message, the board of the Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Association supports the Natural Features Protection Phase 2 map and proposed ordinance changes. The board commends and thanks the NFP Review Board, Ms. Jamie McCarthy, the City Sustainability Development Coordinator, and Mr. Nolan Bergstrom, the City Intern specializing in GIS applications, for their diligence and perseverance. In the opinion of the board, the documents described above align with the City Master Plan, align with the Oakland Drive Winchell Neighborhood Plan, and set a logical and equitable foundation for managing and protecting the natural features in the city of Kalamazoo, both now and for generations to come.
My name is Rebecca Nevela, and my husband and I live on Kensington Drive, 27 Kensington Drive. Our property, along with adjoining Glen Park South, are proposed to become part of the NFP Phase 2 Overlay District, and I would like to voice our full support. Glen Park South has some significant erosion issues, and it's affecting our street and property. Additionally, Glen Park South, our property, and the other parks in the Winchell neighborhood that are up for inclusion are valued green spaces that provide many benefits to the community and to our wildlife. I'm in full support of this proposal in the inclusion of our property at 2727 Kensington Drive, Glen Park South, and the rest of the parks in the Winchell neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Donna Perry Keller. I live at 2117 Crosswind Drive. I sent a letter addressing some of the concerns expressed by both landowners affected by the Phase 2 updates and your commission earlier in the process. I hope you received it, but in case you did not, here are just a few abbreviated thoughts. My property is part of the current Phase 2 map, and I am thrilled to be included as I strongly support its adoption. For far too long in this city, little or no attention was paid to natural features protection as development took place. While it is impossible to undo damage caused by past development, your role on the Planning Commission is to affect current and future land use within the city. That is precisely what you will be doing if you vote to recommend this to the City Commission. Conservation is a long game. By putting natural features protections in place now, you ensure that future generations of Kalamazoo City residents will have a better environment in which to live their lives and raise their families. I strongly urge you to approve the plan without delay. Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen Larson, and I live here in Kalamazoo. For too long, we have used land as a commodity without respect to what it has done to our natural lands and the species that inhabit it. One only needs to look at the water quality of Asylum Lake or Woods Lake to know that there is lasting damage. In the past, natural areas, wild native species, and slopes were ignored and resulted in greater pollution to our city. As a retired educator, my focus continues to be to educate adults and children on the importance of land conservation. Our lives are deeply interconnected with the ground we walk on, as well as the diversity of species that surround us. The NFP Phase 2 map encourages thoughtful development. You need to do what is right for the generations to come. Their future depends on the decisions we make today. Your vote today is important for the future of Kalamazoo and its sustainability. Please vote yes and move this into the next phase. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hello, my name is Judy Huxman, and I live in the Oakwood neighborhood. I am in total support of the NFP Phase 2 ordinance for all the right reasons. It is forward-thinking. It will protect the green spaces in our city of Kalamazoo. It will make all of us good ancestors to future generations by protecting something important for the health of the planet and all who reside on Mother Earth. It requires developers to think differently about how the few remaining green spaces in the city get developed. It doesn't unduly prohibit current property owners from making changes on their parcels. And the ordinance was created thoughtfully by people who know what they are doing. It was a long process. Thank you.
Hello, Planning Commission members. My name is Iris Potter, 1204 Manor Street. I also represent a number of friends and associates who were unable to make comments this evening. Thank you. My comment is one of beyond full support for NFP2. Many of us have seen so many trees and swaths of our woods allowed to be cut over the last few years. Our city has its signed declaration of a climate emergency that in part states that it threatens citizens and the natural world. We need NFP2 in place to potentially further preserve our remaining natural, beautiful environment for all of us. So the declaration serves as a major reason for a yes vote on this next step towards Kalamazoo's commitment to address the climate emergency and to keep the beauty we have here for the younger generations and all to come. Thank you.
My name is John Cruiser, and I'm a resident of Kalamazoo. I live in the Arcadia neighborhood. I want to make sure that my voice is heard, and I'm speaking also for all of the things that can't speak to us that are very important to our lives, that I think a grand piece of law legislation, however you want to define it, Protection Act, in regards to protecting the natural places that we live in, that we need, that provide a lot of restorative energy, restorative faith to most of us, particularly those in the inner city that aren't fortunate enough to, have a large home in the country or have acreage and spend a lot of time outside. Most of us are inside, or we're in urban environments where everything is not natural. And it's important because it acts as a transitional phase. So when you're debating on how to develop something, I think it's vital that you take into these considerations, and I hope that the foresight and the knowledge and the insight that the Planning Commission has will see the absolute logic in increasing this area and giving our green spaces a fighting chance. Thank you.
Stacy, 322 Lake. Hi, my name is Stacy. I live in Kalamazoo, 322 Lake. I live in Southtown neighborhood, and I was calling about the green space between Stockbridge and Lake Street. Thank you, NFP, for saving our little green space. Our last little piece of our country in the city, full of lots of wildlife and lots of big trees, would help with air that we breathe, wetlands, and has a natural watershed that helps with flooding. Please help us save this piece of land. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Dieterman. I live at 2720 Parkview Ave. I support the NFP Phase 2.
Good afternoon. This is Karen Larson, and I just received an email. If you have any doubts of how the residents of Kalamazoo feel about the natural feature protection, all you have to do is realize that the stewards of Kleinstock have reached their goal and have paid off the loan. This is amazing. This is the support behind the NFP. Please pass it tonight. Thank you.
Hello, this is Beth Gregory Wallace from 2214 Waite Avenue. I'm calling to state that I'm in favor of the Natural Features Protection Plan, Phase 2, moving forward, and would like it to help protect our land and nature in our community, and I'm in favor of the process that is being put forward. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Ann Wester. My address is 2303 Linwood Drive in Kalamazoo, 08. I'm calling in support of continued protections of our green spaces. I'm a lifelong resident of Kalamazoo, and I'd like to see our land protected that we have, protected from erosion and the pollution of our waters. So yes, I'm all in support of NFP in this second phase. Thank you.
My name is Alan Hunt, resident of the city of Kalamazoo, 3638 Woodcliff Drive. And I'm just calling to compliment the committee on the work that they've done and how thorough and careful they've been at reviewing parcels, and lend my support to their efforts, and urge you to approve the amendments. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Sharon Deaver. I am a City of Kalamazoo resident, and I wanted to call in support of Phase 2 for the Natural Features Protection Overlay. I'm on the ECC, and I've been watching the Natural Feature Protection Review Board go through the different cases that have been requiring review from Phase 1, and I think they have been doing an amazing job, and I think that I have seen that they have put a ton of work into this, and it being a part of our master plan, I hope that you definitely approve of this Phase 2 part of the Natural Feature Protection Overlay, as it is going to be critical for our environment in the future. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hello, my name is Kei Takahashi. I am a resident at 4227 Persian Wood Drive, Kalamazoo, Michigan 49006. I would urge the City Commission to please approve a renewal of the Natural Features Ordinance Phase 2. I believe this is a very important check against degrading the Asylum Lake Preserve, which so many people in Kalamazoo love and walk in and fish in and do all kinds of recreation in. Please consider renewing the Natural Features Ordinance. We need to preserve the pristine quality of Asylum Lake. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Hello, this is Robert Peelish. My address is 2228 Springmont Avenue, Kalamazoo. I was a founding member of the Asylum Lake Preservation Association, and I'd like to express my continuing support for any and all extensions of the natural features protections. I understand there's a lot of development going on south of Stadium Drive, and we need to preserve the buffer zone as much as possible. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Diana Morton Thompson. I live at 1827 Sheffield Drive in the Oakland Drive, Winchell neighborhood, and I have 2 parcels of land that will be included in the NFP Phase 2 overlay area. That's 1827 and 1828 Sheffield Drive. And I'm here this evening to voice my personal opinion and my support of the NFP Phase 2 map and ordinance revisions, and I urge you to vote yes. The NFP Phase 2 is not only technically sound and logical, in many ways it's quite visionary. But more important, it is the culmination of years of work, starting with the Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 Master Plan and continuing into subsequent neighborhood plans and a myriad of other climate action and sustainability plans that have been enacted within the city. The NFP Phase 2 is consistent with these plans and consequently reflects the values and the will of the community at large, as expressed over a number of years. We all stand at a pivotal moment in the history of Kalamazoo. You, the planning commissioners, have before you the NFP Phase 2, and you have a very important decision to make. Do you succumb to the fears, ignorance, and selfishness of a few, or do you approve the NFP Phase 2, showing that you respect the will of the community at large, that you uphold the integrity of the Imagine Kalamazoo Master Plan and other associated plans and proclamations, and that you support the creation of a beautiful, sustainable, and vibrant community? You have a unique opportunity before you this evening to make a significant positive difference that will improve quality of life for all of us now and for generations to come. Not everyone has this opportunity. Think about it. How are you going to explain to your actions right here, right now, tonight, to your children and your grandchildren? Vote to approve NFP Phase 2. Vote yes. Vote for a sustainable city that we all can enjoy and be proud of helping to create. Thank you.
This is Connie Ferguson. I live at 525 South Burdick Street, apartment 4101, Kalamazoo, Michigan 49007. I'm calling to urge that the Planning Commission approve the expansion of the Natural Features Protection Overlay District, the version 2 that's coming before them tonight. Green areas and other natural features that still remain within our city are really a major community asset and need to be provided reasonable protections. They're valued both by our current residents and by our prospective residents. So thank you for your thoughtful work.
Hi, my name is Tina McClinton. I live in I live at 310 Lake. I am from Kalamazoo. I live in Kalamazoo. I live in Southtown neighborhood. I am calling about Lake and Stockbridge Green Space. I wanted to say thank you to the NFP for adding it into their protection. It is our last little piece of country in the city. This little green space helps all of us with flooding. It is our wildlife's last home in our neighborhood, and we all enjoy the nature that it comes with it. In the morning time, I walk out, I hear all the birds chirping. At nighttime, I hear all the frogs. We are a poor neighborhood, and we need green spaces too. All of us need green spaces in all kinds of ways. Quiet, it muffles sound, it keeps the air pure, lots of big trees that we all need to survive with climate change. It's 60% wetlands, 40% is on a floodplain, has its own God-made natural watershed, which absorbs water like a sponge. It comes in handy in a known flooding area. Ever since 2017, when KBCC growing field came over, we now flood 2 to 3 times a year. So please, for the people, your residents of Kalamazoo that have to deal with the flooding, please approve this map so we can save this little green space that saves our lives and the animals. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, my name is Emily Demarest. I live at 3509 Loudon Street. I'm just about halfway between Asylum Lake and Kleinstuck. And I am very happy to see the NFP being extended. I think it's critical for our local environment, and we can't have development if we're not looking at the sustainability of our resources and the impact that will have on climate change and our local resources. So please, as the NFP, I would like to see it strengthened at every available opportunity. Thank you. Goodbye.
Michael Vaschek, 3724 Lancaster. Good evening. I am calling regarding the NFP proposal. I intentionally did not send a letter in advance tonight for 2 very noteworthy reasons. First of all, my words were twisted last time I did this and used inaccurately. And secondly, the committee did not address the questions or concerns that were in the letter that I sent, leaving, I think, many of us to wonder, were the letters even read? So tonight I'm going to take a different approach, and I'm going to kindly ask that you make note of the following 2 questions that I have, and that you ask these questions and discuss them live tonight. The first one, what is the breakdown between commercial, public, and residential properties in this overlay? Once you know these, what portion is residential, and why are we even considering implementing this for residents? It's an unnecessary undue burden. The argument for commercial and public property makes sense, and I am frankly supportive of that. But this does not make sense for private residents. Thus, a proposal should be made to remove private resident property from the scope. Second question, the NFP committee states that woodlands was only used as a secondary or tertiary characteristic of the properties that are in scope. In fact, this precise statement can be found in the NFP virtual information sessions. If that statement were true, why do over 50 properties on this list have woodlands listed as their primary feature? Clearly, the NFP committee has not been truthful about the scope in this case then. So potentially overreach could be the word. These properties should be removed from scope, regardless of their classification. Now, they may mention that community feedback was another characteristic for some of these properties. And from a legal perspective, what someone thinks of your property is irrelevant from the characteristics of your property. That's just common sense. It doesn't make sense for us to be using that as a property characteristic. There's lots of improvements that the NFP has made to their proposal, and I applaud them for that. However, they have ignored the private property cries of government overreach. And so tonight, I ask that this committee does one of 3 things. Approve the overlay with the requirement that anyone can remove their property from scope within 30 days. 2, approve the overlay with the scope reductions as mentioned. Or 3, reject this proposal and have them go back and rewrite it. Thank you for your time.
Hi, this is Richard Stewart. I'm a resident of the city of Kalamazoo in the Southtown neighborhood. I just wanted to call in my support for the addition to the NFP2 parcels. In particular, we're happy to see that you added 206 Lake Street, 152 Lake Street, 142 Lake Street, 322 Lake Street, and 208 Lake Street. This area is very important to our neighborhood for natural green space, natural watershed, and natural wildlife habitat. It'll help keep our neighborhood sustainable and hopefully keep the temperature down during these hot days. I appreciate that, and I know other neighborhoods have similar features that need protection, and it won't stop all development. It'll simply ensure that our nature is protected when developed. Thank you for your time.
Hi, this is Mary Bacali. I live at 939 Airport Road in Norton Shores, and I just wanted to say that I was aware of your proposal for public places, and I come to Kalamazoo quite often. I really like Kalamazoo, and my good friends are there. And I do want to reiterate what Commissioner Cooney stated, that actions are needed to look out for the creatures and the future of all of us. So I would like to really push for you to accept and vote for the proposal to protect public places. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ian Magnuson. I live at 308 Hilbert, and I am calling to support adoption of the expanded NFP overlay and everything included on it and all the parcels. Thank you to the city for working so hard on improving this really useful tool for smart development and environmental protection. Thank you. Goodbye.
Hello, my name is Tom Duffield. I live at 1204 Manor. And zip is 4906, and I'm calling to support the NFP2 due to the many trees over the years that have been allowed to cut. So once again, in summary, I'm urging you to vote yes on NFP2. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
That is the last comment we have received for this comment period.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Before we proceed, any clarifying questions of staff from the planning commissioners?
I had a question. I can't remember if we, I'm sorry, I missed this one looking through. If a parcel is put into the NFP layer accidentally or by a misreading of the map, is there any appeals process if they're not, if the natural features aren't there?
Yeah, I don't think we've covered this. The information we've been giving folks, because this did come up in the information session, was that they would be able to go through the rezoning process that's already set up at the city level and come to this board, and then a case could be heard very specifically about that property. And that's the avenue kind of already existing that they could use.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff at this moment?
Chair, may I?
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry, I've got dogs barking in the background. So if someone wants to go first, that'd be fine, but I'll hold for a second. Sorry.
I think we can handle it. Go for it.
Okay, so a lot of the comments that we just heard mentioned cutting down of trees, and recently there was a storm and the area around my house had several old branches fall. So I just want to clarify that this would not prevent any sort of safety, maintenance, of natural features that were deemed a hazard. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There's sort of five different criteria or conditions whereby someone can remove any of the protected trees, right? So there are a number of trees that wouldn't even fall into the category of protected. If it's less than 24 inches and not one of these species on the list, which I just checked out, it was, it's a little less than 60 of those sort of native high quality trees. Those can be removed for any reason whatsoever. If it falls into this category of protected, then there are five conditions. One of them being, the tree sustained damage. It threatens, a structure or infrastructure. And so those can just be taken down by right and wouldn't need to be replaced either. And then just to sort of speak to the idea of cutting down trees, you can see from the code and some of those exceptions that the code isn't stopping all tree cutting by any means. It's trying to strike a balance and cause that pause for someone to say, does this need to be taken down? Would I have to go through a variance? Maybe I'll just keep this tree. And with, sort of that, the way that people move, every 5 years, maybe they, have that pause to decide what trees are essential to take down, what's really worth my time, which we probably already see with the high cost of taking a tree down. It's not something that folks do all the time because they're, often just keeping those around for all sorts of purposes or keeping costs down.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions for staff? If not, I think we're ready for a motion to kick off discussion. Remember, this is a recommendation to the City Commission, as these are amendments to the zoning ordinance. We'll need a recommendation, or a motion to recommend approval to the City Commission for the amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding the natural features protection overlay map and text amendments.
I move all of that.
All right, we have a motion by Vyas. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Patelko. All right, Commissioner Vyas, if you wouldn't mind, do you want to kick off our discussion here?
Yeah, I'm excited to move this forward. It is an extraordinary body of work that the committees have put together, and I think, we struggled a little bit a number of meetings ago earlier this year, and what you've put forth today is really, like I said, an extraordinary body of work. It aligns with all of Imagine Kalamazoo and the work that multiple groups across the community are working towards, and just a wonderful next step to take on.
Excellent. Other discussion?
I would just say that we struggled. I voted against this last time. I think there was some concerns that we had. I think a lot of them have been addressed with the changes made, the technical changes and the map changes. And I appreciate staff's both the Natural Features Protection Board and planning staff's efforts in retooling this and bringing it back to us. And I think this is, I think it looks better, and I'm proud to support it.
I'd just like to say that I will also be supporting this. I got the maybe rare opportunity to be on the other side of this as a contributor when it was first released, and now to be voting on it. And I'm glad to see from the presentations from staff in the last month or two that they did as good and thorough of a job as I would have hoped when I first contributed to this project as a resident of the city of Kalamazoo. So, that unique perspective being my own, I will be supporting this.
Great. Any other comments or discussion? I have a few thoughts to share. I voted in favor of this a few months ago, but I will say I am glad that it failed, because what we have before us today is far superior to what was in front of us several months ago. The map is better. It's more defensible. So thank you for your efforts there. The text is better. It's cleaner. And it addresses a lot of the concerns that were raised. And just the more time that was available allows the public, allows us to understand the text more, and it addresses the concerns that were raised throughout the process. So that was good. I also, we have over 2 years of experience to learn from NFP1 and to sort of observe what has happened. And I really appreciate the examples that have been brought before us over the last several months of here's how it's been applied, here's an example. And it shows that it has met the goals of NFP while still allowing development to continue. It hasn't been this sort of wall that has stopped all development. And no one has really come clamoring that says this is the worst thing that's ever happened and you need to stop this. None of those people that have gone through that process, which is quite telling, I would say, especially after it's been in place for 2.5 years. So I have that playing on me as I go through this. And then here we are, we've sat through, over an hour of public comments or so. We had pages of comments, and I will say, I read through all of them. We listened to all of them, and we did so last time as well. And overwhelmingly positive. Whereas last time that was not the case. There was more than a handful of negative comments last time. And so I think that's an important marker as we consider this going forward. And I think that's a reflection of the time that staff put into this and the time we were given to allow people to really absorb this, understand it, and learn how it affects their properties. So thank you for that. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Nolan, Christina, for all of your work. Thank you to the NFP board for the efforts that you put into this. We've heard a lot about democracy over the last year. And I think this is a really great example of democracy in action and how it works and how the public process and government really functions. I will say, the one commenter who asked us to ask some questions, I'm not going to ask those questions and take any time because we have heard from staff multiple times about how this impacts public or privately owned property, and I'm comfortable with where that stands. So unless others have different thoughts on that, I am comfortable with the position there. So and of course, this satisfies the standards of the zoning ordinance for an amendment to the zoning ordinance. It's also compliant, as we stated several times, with Imagine Kalamazoo and several neighborhood plans. So it checks all those boxes. Any other comments from commissioners? All right. We have a motion to recommend approval of the amendments to the zoning ordinance and zoning map. Can we get a roll call vote?
Burgess?
Yes.
Harrison?
Yes.
Milliken?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Patelko?
Yes.
Pitts?
Yes.
Bias.
Yes.
Motion's approved, or recommendation approved.
All right.
Thank you again to everyone for all your work. Okay. Nothing under discussion action items. So city planners report.
So just a couple of quick things tonight. For those of you that may not know, we hired a new neighborhood activator. our previous neighborhood activator, Katie Riley, moved out of state late winter. We've hired an awesome new planner. His name is Dan Baisden. So you haven't seen a neighborhood plan for a little bit because we haven't had the staff to pick up the mantle and move them forward. I'm not sure you'll see one before the end of the year, but you certainly will see them starting again next year, and we're very excited about that. And if we get a chance, maybe we'll have Dan pop into a future meeting to say hi. Second, it sounds like perhaps this is going to be our last virtual Plan Commission meeting. Originally we had talked about staying virtual for city meetings until August 31st. I believe that the City Commission next week is going to make a motion to change that. So please plan on being in person at our August meeting. If we have agenda items, which at this point in time we don't have. If that is a concern to you, if you have questions, please reach out to Pete or I. The City Commission announced at their meeting last week that they will be in person at their next meeting, which is the second meeting this month. But other boards, it looks like we're looking to August. And that's really all that I have.
Thank you. I'd perhaps if you get agenda items for that August meeting, maybe send out an early attendance blurb. Just, I know personally I'll be out of town that day.
Actually, I also will be out of town that day.
Okay, so now we're two.
Me too.
Okay. So perhaps. Okay.
Right. So if we do receive cases, we will reach out. Know also that the September meeting, because of how the month of September starts, is actually before Labor Day. So it's the last week. I don't even know what to call it, but it's before Labor Day.
Okay. Yep.
So just know that is the case. It almost feels like we have 2 August meetings as a result, but that's just a trick of the calendar.
Good. All right.
And that's all I have.
Their agenda. All right. Thank you. Any other questions for staff on their city planning report? Okay. Are there any public comments, general public comments that were left?
We did not receive any general public comments.
Excellent. Mr. Pradle, do you have any city commission liaison comments for us?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Just wanted to make a comment. It's great to see so many people make comments and to call in. I know it can be sometimes a little bit daunting when you see a list of 20 people who have decided to call in or more. But I see it as 20 people who are passionate about something, and I think anytime that happens in our community, that is a win. So thank you for your diligence and taking feedback from everybody along this process. And just really want to thank city staff as well for, again, just as far as I'm concerned, knocking it out of the park in terms of community engagement opportunities, education opportunities, and just really fine-tuning things throughout this process. So thank you to Christina, your team, and Jamie. I know you've been front and center presenting a number of times as well and putting these together. So thank you so much for all your hard work, and hope everybody gets a chance to perhaps get some rest in there in the coming days over the holiday, and have a good night.
Thank you very much. Planning commissioner comments. Does anyone have any comments as we wrap up our meeting? Anybody going once? Going twice? Well, again, thank you everyone for your attention and research. New members, this was a good introduction into some hardcore zoning ordinance work. Congratulations, well done. Again, staff, great work. working through the process and addressing items that were raised last fall. Everyone have a safe and happy 4th of July. And with that, our agenda is exhausted and we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.